And we're about to start.
All right. All right. This meeting is called to order. It is a special called meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections on February 16th, 2021. I am Mary Carol Cooney, chairperson, and I'm joined this morning by my colleagues, Mr. Mark Wingate, Mr. Aaron Johnson, and Dr. Kathleen Ruth. We are expecting Ms. Vernetta Keith Newridden shortly. Let me begin by stating that this teleconference meeting is authorized pursuant to section 50-14-1G of the official code of Georgia because of the public health state of emergency declared by Governor Kemp on March 14th, 2020 concerning COVID-19 restrictions in public meetings, renewed most recently through March the 7th, 2021, and because means have been afforded for the public to have simultaneous access to this teleconference. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you an agenda. Please review it and let me know if there are any additions or corrections.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve this meeting, a special meeting today, February 16th, 2021.
Yeah, and are you voting on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the agenda and I have a second, and Ms. Vernetta Keith Newridden, our vice chairperson, has joined us.
Good morning.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. We have unanimous consent to the agenda. Item 2 on the agenda is communications and responses from the public. Ms. Bodison, does any member of the public wish to be heard?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. Can you give me approximately how many people wish to be heard?
At this time, 6.
Good enough. I don't think we need any special procedures, but I'm willing to hear those if anyone else wants to propose them. Otherwise, who is the first person wishing to be heard?
Regina Wallard will read a statement.
All right, Ms. Waller, please share with us your statement.
Good morning. This letter is written as a declaration of support for Richard Barron as the Fulton County Director of Registration and Elections. As the turbulence of year 2020 with regards to a global pandemic, which caused the death of an election employee, over 30 election employees contracted COVID-19, polling locations declining participation due to COVID-19 concerns, a tropical storm causing a power outage at our warehouse and equipment delivery delays, death threats to numerous staff persons, employees being confronted by hostile poll watchers and monitors in our workplaces, conducting a hand count, conducting a recount, and employees working while balancing their home lives with virtual schooling children and caring for elderly loved ones. Our department accomplished the task at hand to conduct fair and unbiased elections. We were all steadied and rose to the occasion and completed the election year because of the guidance, faith in each employee, and the example to push through the distractions and give the voters of Fulton County the fairness and honesty that they deserve, fair and unbiased elections. The person who is responsible for our success, the county's success amid all of this, is current Director Richard Barron, who has shown his ability to guide, motivate, steer, and maintain the course of integrity, honesty, and fairness. We recognize that our department, as all departments, have improvements to be made. Unlike other departments, our mistakes, whether big or small, make news headlines. As the largest county in Georgia, although our margin of error may be the same as smaller county election departments, our numbers make news headlines. Yet through it all, we and our director persevered, and even with our mistakes, we conducted fair and unbiased elections. We showed vast improvements in the January 2021 election as the nation awaited the outcome and will continue to improve. We respectfully ask that an unwarranted termination of Richard Barron not be conducted. We ask that your decision be guided not by political party lines, candidate preferences, or conspiracy theories, but by the merits that fair and unbiased elections were conducted. We ask that with all we endured during the turbulence of the 2020 year, that you not dismantle our department and disrupt the improvements made. We ask that you allow us to continue to improve and work as a team under the direction of Richard Barron. Sincerely, this letter was written by the Fulton County Department of Registrations and Elections and was herein signed by everyone in that department from what I have in front of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Ms. Bodison, does anyone else wish to be heard?
Edward Smith.
Mr. Smith. Would you unmute, Mr. Smith? Great.
How you doing, ma'am?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, I will read a statement on behalf of Mr. Rick. So I'm reading, good morning. I read communications throughout the news outlet about what's going on here. I believe this board is just being unfair. I believe, you know, the actions of this body should be deemed unconstitutional. I also believe the behavior of this board is reckless, and I'm extremely disappointed. Why would you vote to fire someone who has successfully ran several elections? And why would you vote to fire someone that is clearly stepped in during some of the most controversial elections and controversial times and provided leadership that was required to combat all the things that's going on within that agency? I think this decision should be reconsidered and measurable milestones should be put in place to evaluate job performance. I think that should be used to determine firings as we go here forward. So I definitely would, you know, think that the board should reconsider this decision and work to something that's more executable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Bodison?
Next speaker is Penn Payne.
Ms. Payne, please unmute yourself.
My name is Penn Payne. I've been observing the workings of the elections department over the last 5 years. I'm urging the board not to remove Mr. Barron as director of this department. He has the knowledge and experience gained from the massive challenges of the 2020 election cycle. He rebounded from the June primary, learned the lessons from that incredibly difficult election, and administered fair and impartial elections in November and January. In essence, he turned a battleship around between June and November. And despite some remaining imperfections in the election systems, he implemented many changes and innovations necessary to maximize voting opportunities for Fulton County's citizens. He has the enthusiastic support of the staff of the department, and that weighs heavily in his favor going forward. He is simply the best person to lead continuing improvements in the department so that voting is accessible to all eligible voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Ms. Bodison?
Bridget Thorne.
Ms. Thorne?
Hello, my name is Bridget Thorne. I was a Fulton County precinct manager for nearly 9 years. I've seen Fulton County elections before Richard Barron's hiring and after. I have to say, it has only gotten worse. Through the eyes of a former consultant, I've seen the brokenness of an entire election process. It seems Fulton County elections is always making the news. Untrained workers, equipment malfunctions, water main breaks, COVID outbreaks, extended voting hours, long lines, claims of voter suppression, claims of election fraud, claims of voter fraud. It is so broken, but I love the challenge. Through the years, I've always offered input to Cynthia, Johnny, and Blake. They seem to desperately want to fix things, but only able to make small tweaks. You see, it is the whole system that needs to be revamped. In November, I saw so many concerns while working as a warehouse poll tech with Dominion. I wrote Cynthia, Johnny, Dwight, and Nadine. This time, my concerns went unanswered. Not only did they go unanswered, I got fired. How many other people have gotten fired when they spoke up? How many other people aren't speaking up because they fear of getting fired? How many people fear Richard Barron? What is the environment down there? Senators, commissioners, and I assume some of you board members disagreed with my firing. The Secretary of State condemned it publicly on the steps of the Capitol. Yet, Richard Barron doubled down. He said he was investigating me. Mr. Barron, don't investigate my concerns. Go ahead, investigate me. At least I have truth on my side. Board members, today is not about you have broken system. Your leader, Mr. Barron, has said publicly he is burned out. A burned out leader isn't going to fire up a new system. I think it's time to get a new leader. That is, if you want truth, integrity, efficiency, faith, and fair elections. It's not a partisan issue.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne. Ms. Bodison, anyone else wishing to be heard?
Yes, Patty Nathan.
Ms. Nathan? And will you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Patty Nathan from Sandy Springs. As an educational administrator, I learned that guiding, mentoring, and looking for change and improvement in an employee is key to performance. Although it is clear that the June primary was a disaster, Mr. Barron worked with the community and people within the county to make the remaining election cycle successful. I strongly feel that you should look at and consider the big picture and the improvement, not one disastrous situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nathan. Ms. Bodison, anyone else?
Sante Askin.
Sante Askin.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. I am here just to speak from the heart. I am an employee of Fulton County Voter Registration Office, and I've been working since 2014. And I'm here to just say thank you, Mr. Barron, for allowing me as an entry-level employee to have a voice, for giving me the opportunity to make changes and improvements to processes where I saw fit. People don't know what you allow us to do and how hard that we work. And I just wanted to say, that I've learned my self-worth under your leadership, Mr. Barron. I don't care what the media has to say about you or any outsider. You are a great leader, and we deserve to keep you. It is because of you that I am now a senior at Mercer University, majoring in organizational leadership. And I hope to be half as great as you when I become a director in my future endeavors. So, Mr. Barron, thank you for all that. Thank you for allowing me to work from home in the invasion of COVID-19 when the system sent our kids home. I have friends who are being forced to leave their children at home, but because of you, I can still, protect my child at home and provide. And it's, for me, all of this is it hurts a lot, but you are great, Mr. Barron, and I hope that the board will reconsider because you're an awesome leader.
Thank you, Ms. Askin. Ms. Bodison, anyone else wishing to be heard?
I have George Balbona.
Mr. Balbona.
Okay. On April 2nd, 2019, HB 656 passed the Georgia legislature. This bill stripped the power to appoint the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections chairperson from the Fulton County delegation and gave it to the Fulton Board of Commissioners. Surprisingly, members of the Fulton delegation did not seem to realize that they had this power or had voted to give it to the BOC. I now ask the Fulton BOC to replace Mary Carol Cooney with a more scrupulous and less partisan individual. For years, Mary has ignored public outcry to terminate Fulton County Elections Director Richard Barron, and now she has violated and manipulated Georgia law in order to protect him. I also demand that the BOC conduct an exhaustive search to find a suitable replacement for Rick. Blake Evans is not a suitable candidate due to many conflicts of interest and extremely questionable behavior. The Georgia Secretary of State office, especially SOS Brad, has been gunning for Rick for years. SOS Brad was very quick to throw Georgia election officials under the bus after last year's primary election meltdown. But as always, Brad saved his most vitriolic comments for Rick in Fulton County. I sent an email to the state election board and election investigator in the media, which included audio of an election director detailing an email she sent to Chris Harvey explaining that SOS Brad's comments disparaging Georgia County election officials, including Rick in Fulton County, were unwarranted. She also mentioned that several other county elections directors lit Brad up about his unacceptable behavior. Last year, I submitted an open records request to SOS for these emails and texts. SOS confirmed that responsive information existed and said that it would take 15 business days to process. I paid $240 to process ORR 2020-767. Today is 103 business days, and I have not received any responsive information. Blake Evans and SOS are blatantly denying my information that has direct bearing upon Rick's termination because it mostly redeems Rick and properly lays blame upon SOS. SOS endlessly complains that Fulton County poll workers did not receive proper training. They blame Rick. This is intentional misdirection. Blake Evans was the Fulton election chief and thus in charge of educating Fulton poll workers. So if he did such a crappy job, why did SOS hire Blake away from Fulton County? Mary Carol Cooney contacted an AJC reporter claiming the BRE straw vote in executive session was a violation of the Open Records Act. They both failed to mention that Mary's call itself was a violation of Georgia open meetings law. If everyone cares so much about the Open Records Act, demand that Blake Evans and the SOS immediately provide responsive information to my brazenly delayed ORR. I'll gladly share it with the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balbona. Ms. Bodison?
Johnny Harris.
Johnny Harris.
Yes, ma'am.
Good
Mr.
morning.
Harris.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, I really don't have anything prepared because we was hit with this news on Friday. I got an email. I received the email this morning about being able to speak. But I did want to say Mr. Barron would always celebrate any accomplishments we made, anything we did well. He would put it on notice, and as well as anything that we didn't do well, he would let us know about that as well. I think these are characteristics of a great director, and whether it was a work-related issue or concern or a personal concern, you could count on the guidance of Mr. Barron, the guidance and support of Mr. Barron to get you through. And I believe, in my opinion, it's unfair to even speak on his termination because of what he got us through in 2020. It was a lot of things that we had to deal with, that the country had to deal with, and the department had to deal with. As Nadine, our chief, said in the letter, he's the one that's got us through everything. So to terminate him would suck the air out of this department, the motivation out of this department. So I would just like to say we need to try to reconsider keeping him here if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ms. Bodison, does anyone else wish to be heard?
Yes, Madam Chair. Garland Favorito.
Mr. Favorito.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, unfortunately, we are in court now in regards to unfulfilled open records requests, as well as due process and equal protection concerns in regards to how the county handled the November 3rd election. As part of those court records, there was yet another January 8th open records request I made that was mishandled. At that time, I requested still unposted meeting minutes for the November and December board meetings and received an incorrect response from Mr. Rosenberg that they were not available because they had not been approved. As you know, the November minutes were approved at the December board meeting. But I want to bring to your attention the second part of that request, which was for, quote, an electronic copy of all tally sheets created by the auditors and entered into the Arlo system during the hand count audit that occurred on November 14th and 15th, unquote. I was pleased that Ms. Bodison made available a memory stick with what I thought were the requested records, only to find out that it had nothing I requested. It actually contained electronic copies of the December 12th recount batches, which I never requested. The Secretary of State's office publicly stated that the counties would make these tally sheets I requested available. In fact, Fulton's neighboring counties have simply emailed me these tally sheets within 3 days of my request. This is yet another example of the historic systemic problems the Elections Division has had in fulfilling reasonably simple open records requests. Earlier this morning, I sent each of you the email trail I experienced concerning the fulfillment of my January 8th request. I hope that Fulton County Elections will one day be able to fulfill open records requests as easily as some other counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Favorito. Ms. Bodison?
Rhonda Thomas.
Rhonda Thomas. Ms. Thomas, and please unmute.
Yes, good morning. With the exception of the first individual that spoke of what a great job Richard Barron did, everyone else in favor of him is speaking of his friendship and mentorship. This is not relevant to this situation. We are looking at his ability to perform his job. And with the experience that Richard Barron has, why was our election process so unprofessionally run? Poll managers of 20 years were fired due to speaking out. If Richard Barron is confident in his decisions, why would he feel the need to dismiss experienced, dedicated poll managers? COVID is not an excuse for a poorly run election. COVID came onto the scene in March of 2020. For someone with experience, he had plenty of time to format a plan to work around this issue. Using COVID is not acceptable. Why did we stop counting votes in Fulton County? Why did we make the national news? Why do we look so crazy to the rest of the country? If we have someone that is experienced, he should have been able to manage all of that without Fulton County being the spotlight of the country. His response to inquiries and his follow-up has failed the Georgia citizens. We need to start fresh with a new vision. We need to replace Richard Barron.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Ms. Bodison?
Thomas Boyce.
Mr. Boyce. Mr. Bose.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Thomas Bose. I'm a Fulton County resident. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to comment on election integrity in Fulton County. It's my view that the 2020 election was a debacle. It was an embarrassment for the state of Georgia, particularly Fulton County. And that's why I believe Elections Director Richard Barron must be fired. When questions and concerns were raised before, during, and after the election regarding irregularities that were observed firsthand, Mr. Barron turned a blind eye. Instead of addressing these concerns, he fired two of the poll workers who raised them. And when confronted about the firings, he attacked those workers, claiming they were already under investigation for some unnamed issues and therefore not invited to return to work. One of those poll workers was Bridget Thorne. Ms. Thorne's been a Fulton County poll worker and precinct manager for many years, and her work record with Fulton County is impeccable. I know Bridget Thorne. In fact, I've known her for 30 years. She's a highly capable person. She's well educated and professionally experienced. More important, however, is the fact that she's dedicated and conscientious beyond measure. I've observed her in countless different environments and circumstances, and her conduct and character are above reproach. In short, you will not find a more trustworthy person. If Bridget Thorne said she saw something, you can bet your life she saw it. So for Richard Barron to not only fire her or let her go or not invite her back, whichever he chooses to call it, but to then make vague, unfounded accusations against her and impugn her character by implying some impropriety on her part is outrageous and reckless. This man should lose his job for his ineptitude and shoddy performance alone. But for his derogatory comments and disrespectful treatment of Bridget Thorne, he should be fired and forced to apologize publicly. So I urge you today, Fulton County Election Board, remove Richard Barron immediately from his position as elections director. He has failed miserably and embarrassed Fulton County. Thank you. I appreciate you hearing me today.
Thank you, Mr. Bose. Ms. Bodison?
Michelle M. And that is the final comment.
Okay.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Michelle Marteau. I was not prepared. I just heard of this yesterday, but I did want to make a comment, so I don't have a formal statement. But as a Fulton County citizen, a Georgia voter, I don't know one person, be it Democrat or Republican, that believes that we had a free and fair election, except for those that are the leaders, the Secretary of State, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the elections board. Nobody I know believes that this was a free and fair election. There were many anomalies. And if you look at the Rasmussen poll that was taken November 21st, 2020, up to 30% of Democrats do not believe we have free and fair elections, and up to 80% of Republicans. So I urge you, we need to revamp this entire how we do elections in this state, because there's not one person except for those people that are running the show that believes there was a free and fair election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morteau. That concludes our public comment, Ms. Bodison.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. And having heard all of the citizens whom I thank, that concludes item 2 on our agenda. It brings us to item 3. I believe Ms. Noureddin is going to be in charge of that? Or not? Okay.
What's item 3?
Item 3 is Board of Registration and Election vote on the Registration and Elections Director.
Okay, because I got an amendment to the agenda about executive session at 10:30. Is that still going on?
Dr. Ruth.
That's what
requested that.
I thought that was. Is that happening or not?
Wait a minute. Well, I don't know.
I got the email from you, Madam Chair.
Right, I know that. Dr. Ruth, you and I had a discussion last night, and I asked that we prepare for.
I can move forward with item 3, Madam Chair, if it's a delay, if there is some confusion.
So, well, Dr. Ruth, you're agreeing to Ms. Noureddin moving forward with item 3 in public, is that right?
Yes, let's move forward.
Okay, okay, got it.
So, Madam Chair, for our consent order, you actually ratified the public meeting. Do you want me to do something different than what you've done before?
No, I was trying to figure out what the board wanted, but what I'm gathering is that we are prepared for a vote in public now.
Okay.
And I see consensus among board members.
So I move to ratify our vote in executive session on the termination of Rick Barron.
And I second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to terminate Rick Barron.
Madam Chair, just for
discussion.
clarity.
Yes.
Is it proper to call it a ratification of a vote when technically we didn't have a vote? It should just be, and I'm just making sure, we do whatever we're going to do properly, but shouldn't it just be a vote for?
What's the motion, Aaron Johnson, Mr. Johnson? What's the correct?
I don't have a motion.
Okay, because
I'm just saying your motion was to ratify. I'm just saying your motion.
Do you have an amendment to the motion?
Wait a minute.
I don't have an amendment.
He has a question.
I'm just clarifying.
Point of information.
In the sense that you said to ratify a vote. All I'm saying is we can't ratify a vote from executive session because from my understanding, I could be wrong, but we technically don't get the opportunity to vote in executive session. All I'm saying is if you're going to make a motion, it just should be.
Okay, so I move to terminate Rick Barron.
I second.
All right.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second properly. And now for discussion, Mr. Johnson, anything that you wish to add?
Oh, absolutely, Madam Chair. I think this is an unfortunate situation that we're in. I don't quite, well, I do understand why we're here. I almost said I don't know why we're here, but I do. No, everybody admits that the June election was not our best. It was awful. You can use whatever adjective you want for that election. but I do know that staff recovered well. One thing led to another. We did have an awful election, but staff recovered well. And for the most part, November went well. We know we're getting a new chair in the next 6 months. I don't understand why we don't leave it up to the next board to make these decisions. I had the fortune of speaking to several of our different task force that were very critical of the elections department and Rick specifically over the course of the last earlier in the year. Resoundingly, it was he recovered well. Resoundingly, it was, yes, things were bad, but we need to give him, he made up for it and give him an option to stay, or at least give the next board the option of making this decision that we're putting on them. I think there were great innovations in 2020 with the department under Rick's leadership. He pushed to maximize the use of drop boxes, utilized empty space with the State Farm Arena, High Museum of Art, the GICC, all these other places. I had the fortune of talking to elections officials from other counties, and they were all amazed at the things that Fulton County was able to do under Rick's leadership. And this is not political appointee. These are not political appointees or anything like that. These are people who actually work in elections that understand the dynamics of working in an election department. Our mobile voting units, our Fulton Votes app, all those things that were under Rick's leadership. And it was shown, it was mentioned earlier that about his leadership, and it was a lot of friendship, but those types of things show what a real leader can do. I'll admit, I was one of the people that thought about, hey, Rick, you need to make these changes or we're gonna have to make changes. And he did everything that we've asked him to do. One of the things that people like to talk about is some of the reports that we got about how bad the elections were. But I think my fellow board members can remember, I specifically asked Mr. Jones, who did the report, what grade would you give this department and Rick for the elections in 2020? And he said, clearly, he said a B+. He also said that our problem is not Rick Barron. So if our monitor that was assigned by the Secretary of State can attribute the fact that Rick Barron is not the problem, why are we here today? That I don't understand. And my biggest problem is how we're treating staff. Staff just got through the toughest election they've ever had to deal with and some of the toughest circumstances that they've ever had to deal with. And now this is how we reward them. This is what we come back to them for. They have to get up and go to work tomorrow. They had this cloud over them since last week, but now they got to go to work tomorrow with us doing this to them. It's not just Rick that we're getting rid of. As mentioned by one of the staff, we're sucking the air out of the department. Now, if everybody is fine with that, I just think it's going to cause chaos in our department. I think it's going to cause chaos for the November elections. And I just don't feel that this is the best option for this department. And that's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I do not hear or I do not see anyone else. Are we ready for a vote?
Are you making a comment, Dr. Ruth? Or no?
Yes, I did want to make a comment. So I do acknowledge, that the 2020 election cycle was truly unprecedented. We had a presidential primary, general election, a risk-limited audit, recount, and a January Senate runoff, all during a global pandemic. And all of these events occurred during a condensed timeline under the national telescope. While there were definite improvements from June to November, the 2020 election cycle did highlight many vulnerabilities in the Fulton election system, errors, sloppy and inefficient processes that really are unacceptable. The independent, nonpartisan state election board highlighted numerous mismanagement, and procedural issues of great concern. The report is the product of 270 hours of observing every aspect of Fulton County's election processes, personnel, and the use of technologies. And some of the takeaways from that report revealed that there were no chain of custody forms being used as ballots moved from room to room, mass optional policy putting essential staff at unnecessary risk, no process to sufficiently protect spoiled and rejected ballots in the mailroom, using an outdated version of Easy Vote to check in voters, poor record keeping for ElectionNet, persistent chain of custody issues, ballots that were being delivered to State Farm Arena in unsecured mail carts, which the monitor noted was very concerning. Technology issues abounding during the recount, the server crashing on November 29th. That was a costly error caused by a failure to properly follow protocols for backing up and uploading data to the servers. The January 5th runoff seemed like it went very well, but we had to recertify due to 2 precincts not being tabulated. 4 compact flashcards were left in the tabulation at their precincts. These errors and inefficiencies waste taxpayers' dollars. They undermine voter confidence. Fulton County has over 800,000 voters and is as large as 6 states. This is not political. This is a bipartisan vote. The department needs new leadership that can take Fulton to the next level, modernizing our election process, making the county election system more accurate, cost-effective, and efficient. And as Georgia's largest county, Fulton should be the model for elections across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. Anything further?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, Mark,
I just want to.
Mark is trying to speak.
Go ahead.
I
No,
didn't see him raise his hand.
No, let Vernetta go ahead in sequence, please.
Okay, that's fine. Aaron, I'll go after Aaron. He was trying to say something. I want to jump in.
I just want to remind everybody that I specifically asked Mr. Jones, our monitor. He gave a report with a lot of the things that Dr. Ruth listed as issues that happened during the election, or during the elections, I should say, not just one, but multiple elections. But even after he wrote the report, I directed a specific question to him. The question was, what grade would you give Fulton County for the 2020 elections? He said B+, well, he said A-, well, B+. And without further instruction, he said that our issue is not Rick Barron. So if we get a B+, even with the issues that were just listed for the audience, be mindful that that very same monitor who wrote those said that the grade for the elections department is a B+, and that the issues that we have is not Rick Barron.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. All right, now.
Mr. Wingate.
Let me just briefly comment to Mr. Johnson's remarks. Yes, that was stated in question of Mr. Carter Jones. It was also stated by Mr. Carter Jones with respect to Fulton County's chain of custody. His terminology for that was dangerous. I repeat, dangerous. And with that, that's all the remainder I have to say regarding this particular section. So I'll turn to Ms. Nurin.
Ms. Nurin.
Thank you, and I'll just be brief. I would like to say that I met with Rick for the first time about a week or so after he was hired. And I think that I won't ever diminish or dishonor his contribution to Fulton County, because he expanded early vote. we were only having a few polls, and he expanded early vote, and did early on just great things, I believe. I think it's great that his staff is supporting him. I think that it's great that people are speaking for him. I think that the voices of the people who did speak in opposition of him today, it didn't just start with Carter's report or the 2020 election. It's been going back years. But I would say for me personally, my decision was based on not 2020's election, but 2017, 2018, 2020. I think we had special elections pretty much every year since I've been on this board. So I think that it's interesting how much the staff just doesn't know. And even though Mr. Johnson is, and I wasn't going to bring in Carter's report, I think that it could harm the county and bring lawsuits against the county. Mr. Johnson brought up Mr. Carter's report. I think that, so I know for certain that all the details are not public. But what I will say is we have just consistent, continual issues around the absentee ballot process. Going back to what Mr. Johnson said about Carter's rating, his question was, what would you give Mr. Barron? It wasn't, what would you give the county? But he said A-, B+, but I would give, and he named another one of Rick's deputies, who I won't name. He said that person is a big problem, and the worst dangerous chain of custody, provisional votes. And I think this document should be published, but I can read just the process, words like sloppy, mismanagement, no intake of provisional ballots, no system of counting provisional ballots. For me, the issues with just the relationship building outside of his department. So, we heard from 2 employees who praised him as an employer, and then we heard from Ms. Thorne, who just didn't share that experience. Madam Chair sent a link to an article, I think Mr. Kaufman wrote it for the Atlanta Magazine, and it was just a firsthand account of where Mr. Barron is today. Words like worn out, I don't respect the process, and these are just direct quotes. So I think in a leader, we have to, yes, he has to be beloved by his staff, but he has to do the job. And the job is every absentee ballot that's sent to a family or a voter by mail, when they complete that, they should trust that that vote is counted. And every election, we have thousands of missing ballots, absentee ballots by mail that voters have completed and mailed back to the county, but it just never got to the county and wasn't counted. And no one spoke today of those people, those voters. And I think I was appointed to represent that voice. For every voter that believed that their provisional vote count, that believed that their absentee by mail vote count, that believed that every time that they walk into a poll, that their vote is going to count. And we just have just a history, systemic problems that even Mr. Johnson said that Rick is not the problem, alluding to another person, but he's the top guy. He's the top person. So a person under him can't be the problem, and Rick is clean. If he has a person that he can't manage that's detrimental to this process, then he can't manage the department. And it's not about 2020 and June. June was a nightmare, but we had so many issues every single election, even in November and even in January. So I like Rick, I hate that it has come to this, and I wanted to give Rick an opportunity to transition, and I don't think that was actually brought to him. I don't want to dishonor his contribution, and I won't, because I know that he's made contributions to Fulton County. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. As a board member, I would like to take the opportunity myself to say something. I trust my fellow board members recall that a year ago, we did an annual evaluation, as we have done every year since I've been chairperson, of our elections director, and that he got just the highest possible grades from us. What was the difference between 2020 and 2021? There are a couple things. And one of them was the Secretary of State starting a brand new statewide absentee ballot initiative in the middle of the election. And it was all unleashed on us. I don't think that anybody present at this meeting has taken into account what happened to us with that. And among other things, voters got absentee ballots from, or applications from all kinds of third parties, and were confused by them, and rightfully so. The Secretary of State's MVP page did not work well, and no one has mentioned that. There were a lot of things that happened with absentee voting that made the whole election cycle extremely difficult. This is not to ignore the biggest, which is the COVID pandemic. I am somewhat amused listening to the national news every evening about how hard it is for the states to figure out how to get people in the right order, the right category to vote, if you are not to vote, but to get their shots, if they are over 75, if they have an underlying condition, if they are teachers, various other things. When these things get unleashed on you, you have to react to them. You don't decide whether they have happened or not. We have not given ourselves the opportunity to realize what an enormous challenge this last election cycle has been. Finally, besides this board not taking into account that these things happened, this board last year never set performance goals for our elections director. That's us. And having not done so, we did this really on the fly and have made no provision for a new director. Zero. Now, you talk about professionalism. I think that is something that we need to think about as to where the buck stops. The buck stops with us, and we haven't done it. We haven't done it right, and we haven't done right by our elections director. Having said that, that's all I have to say. Thank you. All right. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes, I am ready for a vote. I would like to add, I think that what you're speaking of, Madam Chair, was what you say was your responsibility during his annual review. And I think that, I wish that it wasn't, for instance, the document that we're reading from, the continued issues with communication between you and the board. I think that the challenge is that you and Mr. Johnson are deliberately misleading the community, and by what you know, what you've experienced on this board, and what the real grade that Carter Jones gave was a D-, if you remember, to what the problems were in the department. And somehow, I don't know how a person can think. It's not about Carter Jones or 2020. It's about the consistent problems that this department has had. I know if it was a popularity contest, Rick will win hands down. I think it's just not that. I think that just the example, the length in which you personally were going through as chair to prevent this from happening, it speaks to some of the biggest challenges we have in the department and with this elections board. It's my daughter. But I would say that I'm ready. That's all
right.
Yeah.
Let's let the facts speak for themselves. All right, so what is the motion on the before us? Ms. Newriddin?
Ms. Mariska, did you record my motion? Will you share it with Madam Chair?
Initially, it was to ratify a decision that was made in executive session. You then amended it to terminate the director.
And also to another misrepresentation that Madam Chair is saying that this body did not prepare for an interim director who was handpicked by Mr. Barron. So she deliberately is misleading the public and the media by saying that this body was not prepared for a smooth transition. And that,
I think not, but you have a motion before us.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson wants to speak.
You have a motion before us.
I see head shaking, but for the record, I was totally fine with just going with the vote until a couple of comments were just made with my name specifically. So therefore I will respond. This notion that we are somehow misleading or holding up the process is tremendously unfortunate. And to keep saying that Rick handpicked the person that you all chose is also misleading, because I did not interrupt you.
You got your time without interruption. Mr.
Just
Johnson.
because someone handpicked someone for a particular position does not mean that that person is being quote unquote handpicked to lead the department. So I don't want anybody watching this or hearing this to believe that somehow Rick chose a successor or chose handpicked somebody after he found out that we were willing to let him go. So that needs to be clear.
Facts there. I didn't say that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Have you completed what you wanted to say? Yes. All right. We have a motion. Do we need further discussion? Mr. Wingate, are you trying to discuss?
No, we need to do as the motion and seconded was passed to vote, please.
Right. All right. All in favor of the motion? I think we need to.
You've done that.
I have not.
We've had a series of comments to that seconded motion, Mary.
Right, but we have to vote. We have not yet voted.
Trying to do, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion? Cooney, no. Newriddin?
Aye.
Wingate?
Aye.
Johnson?
No.
Ruth?
Yes.
The ayes have it. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda, unless anyone has personnel matters or discussion of litigation. And let me tell Ms. Newriddin, I arranged for going into executive session only in response to a request by Dr. Ruth, because we do need the assistance of our technical staff to do so, not for any reason of mine. All right. Unless anyone has personnel matters or discussion of litigation that requires executive session, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.